So today's class is Ayurvedic beverages, and we will talk a little bit about nuts as well. And Ayurvedic beverages is pretty simple. The aim and objective of the beverage is that it should, clear ama, balance Agni. And when somebody's Agni is down and low, then a semi-liquid diet should be given. It's kind of a simple thing as far as beverages is concerned. And there's do's and don'ts. I'm just going to write a few. So I'm going to write the do's. Don'ts first. Don'ts is avoid cold or frozen water. Avoid cold drinks, especially ice. Do's would be hot, warm water all day, warm teas, soups, semi-liquid khichdi when not well. That kind of pretty much, do you know why we avoid cold or frozen water? Any idea? Yeah, absolutely. So it does dampen Agni, but not only do we avoid cold or frozen water right in the, generally, but we also avoid generally drinking water with a meal. So instead, the meal itself should, so after a meal, you can have warm tea, which helps in digestion. But during a meal, if you have a semi-liquid khichdi as part of the meal or a soup, then you don't need to drink that water. That's the idea. And it's okay to sip some water, but not drink like glasses and pints of it. Let me save this. Yeah, there's a difference between cool drinks and cold drinks. So cool drinks that are naturally cooling, especially in summer, is absolutely good and should be taken. But when I say cold drinks, I'm talking about the one with ice and freezing, and especially in moist weather, winter, spring, late winter. If even if it's summer and outside it's raining, then one should avoid freezing beverages and even ice cream. That's the idea. I mean, ice cold is what I'm talking about. And especially in what is the definition of cooling in Ayurveda? So, a hibiscus tea is cooling, even if its temperature is cool or slightly above room temperature. And even if it is served hot. Doesn't make sense? So it is the quality of the hibiscus tea that would be cooling. For example, cold pressed coconut oil, I think you might have talked about it in the last class, is cooling. It's almost like a refrigerant, aloe vera. Aloe vera juice is a cooling thing. In fact, we even put aloe vera on so when we do cooling, we're really talking about internal refrigerants. And yeah, if it's summertime and it's hot, cooling things are absolutely fine. Just not, tons and tons of ice. And when I say tons of ice, it's like a very American thing, not even in Europe, even now. Not that I go out to pubs or whatever, but, I lived in England for a while, and in England, they serve those microbreweries, they serve it on tap. So it's cool, but they do not put ice in it. Only in America, they're serving even alcoholic drinks with ice. I don't know what it is with the whole ice business. Everything is ice in it. Yes, it's about the herbs. And the idea is, so like I said, I mean, everything was on tap. Mostly in England is all about tap. So if you go to a pub in England, they will not put ice in their drinks. It's a cool drink, but it's not iced. Does that make sense? And anyway, alcohol is a very heating drink to start with. All alcohols are very heating, except for maybe beer, because it's barley. You want me to save this for you? All right, saved. All right, let's talk about vata. So, do you remember anything that any kind of symptom a vata person may show? Let's say, what is a very typical vata thing that might happen to anybody, not just a vata person? Okay, let me write that down. So you have dry skin, dry hair, these are the gunas. Roughness of the skin also, maybe. Constipation, maybe ringing in the ears. And constipation is because there's not enough lubrication internally and externally. That's what the dry and roughness is coming from. So we want to counteract that by doing things that have the opposite effects. There's lubrication, right? So you want to give hot water. A vata person should definitely not be drinking ice cold drinks. So nobody should, but like a pitta person can get away with it because they're pitta, but they will start feeling it off if they do it for, every single meal they're having a cold drink with ice. But hot water or warm water, what we call comfort foods. You know how people automatically want soups in the winter, right? So mung bean dal soup, vegetable barley soup, lassi is kind of like a buttermilk. So here's the thing. When we talk about traditional buttermilks, that was basically the whey portion. So when you make a curd, I don't know if you know how to make a curd, before you make cheese, basically milk is, they'll add like vinegar or some agent in the milk or enzyme. It separates the milk solid and the water portion, which is the whey. And the whey is made into cultured and made. That's a traditional buttermilk, and that's what really Ayurvedic buttermilk is. But what they do now is they just take whole milk then they ferment it with the, I don't know, Lactobacillus bulgaricus or some kind of agents. That's a true buttermilk, and the name of that buttermilk in Ayurveda is called takra. And we serve it with cumin, roasted cumin, and coriander seeds, again powdered, and hingu as a fatida for vata person. And it's optional, obviously, if it's not vata. And rock salt or sea salt. And takra and lassi are not the same thing. And the reason I'm making the distinction is because they're not. Takra is more buttermilk, but when you do not have the option, like if you have mozzarella cheese, sometimes if you go to buy mozzarella cheese balls, they'll have the mozzarella swimming in the whey portion, right? That whey portion is what is a traditional takra. Oh, it's tarka. So buttermilk. And the lassi is just literally 1 part whole milk yogurt and 3 parts, filtered water. Basically, it's been blended together and the same things. So you're using the same, whether it's takra or whether it's lassi, you're using the same things, but the difference is, if nothing is available, if you don't have access to whey, then using yogurt is fine. And what kind of yogurt do we want to use? We ideally want to use a yogurt when it's sitting for a long time in, let's say, a grocery store, then it's a vipak. It kind of becomes sour. You may not taste the sourness, because of the way they process it, but it actually goes from sweet to sour. So we want to take, fresh whole milk yogurt, or even if it's, non-fat yogurt or made with, which has not been sitting out for a long time. So I know that, um, there's try and find local yogurts, and you want to have something which does not have a lot of additives, and it's simply made and with lots of good bacteria. So you take that 1 part yogurt and 3 parts filtered water. Another thing to do, if that is also not available and there's no time, is do a kefir. Now, kefir is naturally tart and sour, so it's fantastic for a Vata person, but you cannot overdo it, because kefir is fermented and it's super tart. So you want to, especially for a pitta person, you kind of want to avoid it. But if I was to give for pitta, I would just take sweet whole milk yogurt, fresh, add filtered water and do this. But for even for kapha, I would do the takra. I would avoid this. But Vata person, kefir is absolutely fine. And what I do is sometimes I cheat. I don't have time to make. I'll buy some really good quality kefir, and I'll mix it with water and dilute it, and then I'll add kapha spices to it. I mean, like black pepper, trikatu, even triphala powder, and you just like a little amount just after a meal is fantastic for the heavy feeling. So hot water. So this lassi, buttermilk, takra, kefir are fantastic. Then of course broth. The reason I use the word broth, Ayurvedic soups, that's why I wrote the dal soup. You have the slightly thick soups are made up of a base of dal. Dal is just a lentil, like mung bean or lentil bean, and they're different beans. And when you add vegetable potato, it's a slightly thicker soup, but even it's never as thick as, this, what do you call it, chowder? Soup consistency is never very thick. You know how they have the creamy tomato soup, whatnot. The only time you have such thick consistency if you add a little bit of potato. But the idea is they're all thinner soups, and the best soup given to someone who's not feeling well or is constipated is like a broth with ghee. And kanji gruel soup is just a gruel, watery rice starch gruel. Is this too much information? I just kind of gave the entire, pretty much everything for a Vata person right in one slideshow. Shall I go through it again? Okay. All right, let's start again. We have Vata person. They may have, these are just some issues that, we talked about. Dry skin, dry hair, rough skin, constipation, ringing in the ears. Can you think of anything else that a Vata person may have, which is consistent with a Vata imbalance? Or kapha or pitta person may have, which is a Vata imbalance. Can you think of that? They'll have variable Agni, Visham-Agni. What else? What about their mind? You think mind may be Rajasic? Like, going on and kind of, not being able, hitting the ground running. Is that the right, is that how they say? Yeah, exactly. All over the place and spaced out and, lack of appetite, ama, so why this particular slideshow is so important, and we do it separately because we are just throwing all this information at you. Because let's say you have a client and let's say they've had a surgery, or they've had an emotional, how people, when there's a relationship breakup, they're always showing in movies people reaching for ice creams and chocolates, and I totally get it. I would do that too. But the idea is, really, if they really want something to comfort that Vata, then they should reach for Vata pacifying things like sweet, a soup with sweet vegetables and lassi and broth and whole wheat and whole grains, things that will give them comfort and make them feel kind of full. And well, in that sense, ice cream is kind of made of milk and it's kapha. So in that sense, but next time somebody who's kind of unhappy, try to give these anxiety, because these are actually happy foods. So even moving in March, we're going to be talking about PMS, PMDD, PPD. Okay, let me. We'll be talking about. So we'll be talking about premenstrual syndrome, premenstrual depression disorder. It means that it comes every single time at PMS there's a depressive episode. Postpartum depression. We'll be talking about pregnancy. Not pregnancy, not so much, just a little bit. And then we will talk about women's issues. For example, we'll talk about, let's say, uh, uh, we might talk about amenorrhea or menorrhea or dysmenorrhea, painful period, low flow of period, absence of periods, cramping during the period. All of these things can be used because it's all the cramping and pain and anxiety, it is all vata. So even if it's happening to a pitta person, does it make sense? I'm again going to save this for you. There's a lot of, yeah. I'm used to doing this. I haven't done it for a couple of years. I used to do this every time I do a community workshop. Instead of, inundating people with what is Ayurveda and what's your Prakriti, what's your dosha, and making them go crazy, I just talk about beverages. And it's always pretty much a hit. I've been doing it 15 years. And if you ever want to do a workshop or like give a talk where you want to introduce Ayurveda to your community, friends, relatives, talk about beverages. It's always easy. And it's something that someone can incorporate tomorrow, today. And if you're also serving beverages at your event, it's a hit. They're like, oh my God. So it's pretty good. All right. Let's save this, clear all drawing. So we talked about vata. So pitta, can you think of some health issues that are related to pitta? Whatever comes in your mind, the rest I'll fill in the blanks. Okay, that's a good one. So let me write that down. So pitta is to do with heat. So what is the one thing about body that is to do with heat? Inflammation. Anything burning, burning, tingling, heat, amla pitta, acidity, acid reflux, a skin red, heated, inflamed, dermatitis, anything itis, basically. Skin, I'm just going to do this. Itis, because itis is inflammation of the skin, red, heated. You could have psoriasis, dermatitis, some kinds of eczema. The thing is, skin is also to do with vata, but when it's a vata skin issue, the skin is not red and heated. It's still cold and rough and dry. When it's to do with pitta person, there's excessive oil, there's redness, there's heated, there's inflammation, there might be swelling. And then, of course, a person mentally may be impatient, headaches, and diarrhea. These are just some couple of things, like, and since we are talking about women, for a pitta woman, sometimes like endometriosis, maybe I should not talk about that. So, there's some women, they have a very long uterine bleeding. They are, and this is very normal, and like they'll have a period for 9 days, and then after 21 or 22 days, they have the period again. So the only way they get rid of it is they actually either go on steroids or they go on, some hormones or birth control, and that's the only thing that stops it. And it's very painful, it's very inconvenient. And like we have a student who's lived with it always. She didn't even think it was, there was an option. And then now we've got her, that is a very, very pitta thing. The pitta was so high, and quite often the whole, 8 or 9 days of uterine bleeding. It is going on and on and on and on. So we need to, stop it a little bit. There's an herb called ashoka, which is kind of, stops that hemorrhaging. Maybe that's not a good word to use. Stops that excessive bleeding, and we use that. And so usually at that time when a pitta woman has all of these things, she will also have some skin issues and, oh boy, impatient and critical. I have a client, and she's a very dear client of mine, and she's extremely pitta. So if she's coming on to, like, she comes to me for Ayurvedic massages and consultation, and I ask her, are you on your period? She'll say yes. I said, well, I just remembered I have an appointment, because she will come and she will blow up, and she will, you know, yell at me or get upset. And that's nothing, it's not anything wrong with her. It's just hormones. And so, be careful. You kind of, have to understand it's not personal, but like, okay, let's not do it. Let's not do it when you are on your period, because there's just all these hormones happening, right? Okay. So the idea is whether all of these issues, or, is it acid reflux or whatever it may be, the same things can be given. Coconut water is cooling. When we talked about Waki, we talked about cooling. Yes, what is cooling in Ayurveda? One that is kind of like an internal refrigerant. And one drink we didn't take into account is aloe vera juice. So coconut water, rose water, dal soups cooked with coconut oil, and, having cooling spices. Any soups which have bitter and sweet vegetables. And room temperature water, even cool water. And again, kanji gruel soup with sunflower oil or ghee. Yeah? Any questions? Again, I kind of rushed through it. I'm sorry. I can kind of repeat everything. Do you want me to repeat anything, or just read through it and ask me if you have any questions? I mean, just from my own experience as an Ayurveda doctor and Ayurveda practitioner for a long, long time, this is the one thing you could give to all your clients pretty much. Because I mean, one day I get a client who's 70 years old, and, they're on 10 different prescription drugs, and you can't do anything for them. They're not going to change anything. But beverages, they will add or change. It's the one thing I could do. Having a client who's just, maybe has a chronic disorder, right? Cannot do anything about it, but you can change the Agni and manage. So these things are quite fantastic. It is very, very good support. Any other question? No? All right, I will save this again. You're going to have a lot of, all right. There'll be quite a few screenshots tomorrow. Kapha, kind of very easy. Kaphas should drink hot water. Bitter green vegetable soup, same. So pitta and kapha can have similar soups, except you don't want to put too many sweet things in kapha. It's all astringent and bitter stuff. Broth dal. The dal means legumes, and the legumes that you do not want to give a pitta person is garbanzo beans. And what are those called? They're white in color, and they're long beans. I can't remember. Lima beans. Yes, lima beans. These are the two ones you want to avoid giving. You can give pitta everything, vata everything. All beans. So this soup, when we say dal soup, and you will dal soup or dal soup, it simply means lentil legume soup, but not thick like, if the black bean soup from that you will see. They don't even do it in a soup form. They take black bean in the Mexican restaurants, and how Mexicans cook it. They will just, they have many beautiful ways of doing it, but I'm talking about this brothy with, vegetables and some legumes swimming in it. You get the idea? And the dals are mung dal. Do you know all kinds of dal? There's lentil is that called red masoor dal. There is peas, split peas. There is chana dal, which is made of garbanzo beans. There is urad dal, which is black lentils. There is all kind of legume soups. That is all kind of beans. Black beans, red beans, lima, not the white beans, navy beans. Navy, white, kidney, red. I don't know if I missed anything out, but the idea is to make actually a soup out of that. The only person you want to avoid all of these dals and just kind of give mung dal is vata person, because yeah, you know, beans will, when the body is metabolizing beans, if it's not cooked properly, if hingu was not used, if it wasn't soaked all night, and a person's agni is not okay, they will pretty much end up having a passing flatus gas. So you want to make sure that it's cooked properly. So if they're eating from outside, mung dal won't do it as much. And we talked about kanji soup. You know the sticky rice, sticky Japanese rice they use in sushi? So they also make a little white starchy thing. If you go and stay in a fancy hotel, sometimes, and you know, they will serve a kanji where you have very for breakfast. All it is literally rice cooked in water, but it's kind of the water that it was cooked in, it's still swimming in that water, and it's almost like a starchy, gooey substance. And they have these little things that they serve in it. And I mean, if you go to a Japanese restaurant, they have different, they have wasabi sauce, they have miso sauce, they have ginger sauce, they have horseradish sauce and whatnot, these sauces that you can mix, and vegetables, and that you can mix in the kanji and have it. But the kanji that we are talking about is exactly the same kanji, except it's not made of Japanese rice. It's not that, but you know, even if it is, but we add ghee to it, and we will add, spices that help digestion. I'm going to show you some pictures after this, so it'll make a little bit more sense. So one of the big stars of Ayurvedic beverages is boiled water. And it's a very strange thing what we do. So we basically take water and we boil it, and then we let it warm, or we let it go back to room temperature, and then we drink it. So why did we need to boil it in the first place? Because when you boil water, it is easier to digest. Very simple. So how is it taken? Vata person, boil water, cool till it's warm, and drink it warm. Pitta person, boil water, cool it, drink it. Kapha person, boil water, drink it hot, as hot as they can take. Here we go. Vat, Pit, and Kapha. What is this thing about boiling water in Ayurveda? So, in India, there are places that, you're in rural places, and 90% of diseases in rural places happen because of contaminated water. So boiling, contamination of water, and then of course, in India, they'll add moringa to it. Does everybody know what moringa is? Turmeric. So they will, add moringa and turmeric to the water, and they will boil the water too. What that does is that it's kind of a, natural, it kills all those gram-positive bacteria, and there have been studies done on it, and turmeric is, of course, antibacterial, antifungal. some, not very much antiviral, but some antiviral as well. And then there is another thing they add in India. They'll sometimes add guduchi sattva, which is basically a powder made with guduchi, which actually is antiviral and it cleanses the liver. So then they boil it and they just, everybody drinks it like that. In fact, when a woman has given birth, there is no room temperature water for her for 40 days. I remember I was with, and when I had my first baby, and I was in India, and I just had a C-section. I was really, really thirsty. My pitta was going crazy. And I said, Mom, just give me, I told my mother, just give me cool water. She refused to. Not only would she give me boiling water, she would add all these things. And I had her domestic help sneak out to get me cool water. And then, of course, she found out. So even though I knew better, but it's hard. It's hard, you're on bed and you have to drink boiling water. I said, okay, why don't we cool this water a little bit? Because my pitta was very high. Anyway, the idea is, and this is a very easy thing to do. I mean, everybody has a kettle, right? Either they just put the kettle on. I don't know how many of you are tea drinkers. Anybody, any tea drinkers here? If you're a tea drinker, this is like, you won't even think about it. Yeah? Anybody here? Oh, yeah. So if you're a tea drinker, you're used to putting the boiling water in a kettle and just cool it down, use it for drinking too. If you're a coffee drinker, you're a little bit in trouble, but the water that you use for coffee, it kind of smells like coffee then. You kind of have to have a kettle. And for Ayurvedic thing, it's a good idea to kind of adopt tea drinking habits. And then, of course, we need to do this because this boiled water becomes the base for adding herbs too, for whatever reason. And another thing, that boiling water adds Agni and fire Mahabhuta to the water. So water is generally heavy. Now it becomes light. That is the moral of the story. We are changing heavy water, and this doesn't mean heavy water as in it has heavy ions and whatnot. Just generally the qualities is heavy to digest. I mean, try it just for an experiment. Take 2 cups of water, take half a cup of water and half a cup of water, half cup boil and cool down, another half cup ice it, have it in a cold part of the fridge. Drink the water that has been boiled and cooled and drink the ice water and tell the difference. You will immediately notice the cold water. For 1 second it feels good, but that actually feels heavy, and the water that has been boiled, you're very easily able to digest it. If you're sensitive to those things. So this is probably something you'll end up telling everybody. So, print this slide and use it. Yeah, it's such a huge difference. This is the funny thing, I stopped drinking milk like 6 months ago. So I started on the almond creamer and the coconut creamer, not coconut creamer so much because it's too cooling, and a little bit of soy creamer. So I even heat my creamer, and my son thinks it's absolutely hilarious. So the latest is that, he can't stand it that I'm, heating up the creamer. So he'll put it outside because he gets up in a half an hour before me. He'll keep it outside before I come down from upstairs. He's like, here's your creamer. You don't have to heat it up. So thank you. Yeah, that nuts. I'll heat my creamer. Yeah. I know. It's hard. Yeah, but I mean, I'm a little bit more extreme simply because, I'm kapha, so my throat, I've had laryngitis, pharyngitis, all kind of kapha issues, so I have to be very careful. And I also sing, and I have to, in order to sing and maintain my notes and go different octaves, I need to keep my throat well. And so, yeah, that's another thing. If you like to sing, if you're a public speaker, you kind of need to take care of your throat. Then here's it is: boil water, cool down. All right, saving. Here's all the things we just talked about. So if someone has ama, so ama, you just give water. It's a natural cleanser and detoxifier. Removes Ama, digest faster, increases Agni. Obviously, this means you cannot give it to a Pitta person. So Pitta person, when you are taking boiling water, you actually cool it down. But for Vata Kapha, you can give it warm. It increases absorption and assimilation of food. So this is why we are giving soups. That's why we give soups. We give kanchi water with ghee. I mean, just the broth with ghee is really, really good for a person. What happens? It reaches the tissues faster. It hydrates them. It increases. Rasa is all the waters in the body, the water in the interstitial tissues, the water in the lymphatic system, the plasma portion of the blood. Literally, just the waters in the body. And we, of course, like we're talking about hot water or teas and whatnot, when we boil an herb in water, we boil the herb in water. Then, for example, ginger tea. I mean, this drove me nuts. I went to someone's house and they said, "Would you like some ginger tea?" And I'm like, "Sure." So they took some. I said, "Do you have fresh ginger?" They said, "Oh, don't worry, we make our tea with fresh ginger." They took like water, like Americans, and it wasn't hot boiling water. It was just like kind of warmish water, and they chunked some ginger into it and they called it tea. And I'm like, no, 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 let me try. Yeah. So it was really, it didn't taste like tea. So what is Ayurvedic tea? Uh, when we say tea, when an Ayurvedic practitioner means tea, you have boiling water, you boil the herb, or you steep the herb. So which kind of herb? Root herbs like ginger or a ginger root or turmeric root, you will actually boil it. And steeping things like leaves and flowers, you will, for example, cinnamon you will boil because it's actually a bark of a tree. So some herbs you actually boil. And I think I sent an article today in class about mushrooms. So mushrooms are sometimes boiled in milk. That's another story why we are. So the idea of boiling it in liquid, boiling it in water, that's then that increases that what we call it's called pharmacokinetics. It is the delivery of the herb or the drug in the body. So what means does it take? So this is one of the ways we do it. Cold water kind of actually is a shock to the system, and warm things will kind of dilate, right? Naturally. So cold water is really bad for Vata Kapha. Not so good. Let me save this. Some chat. Oh, that's a tough one. So I have grown up making my own ghee all my life. And even when I moved here, I said, there's no way I'm buying anything from outside. But um, yeah, so we kind of do 50-50. Half our ghee we make, and the rest, well, we used to make it completely from scratch, like we would do the milk. So this is how I grew up making milk. I would walk with my dad, or I would walk with my I'm sorry, servants, to the cow shed, and then the cow has been milked, and we would bring the milk, and then we would remove the cream. The cream would be cooked, and raw butter would be created, and half of this would become ghee, and that's what I lived with. But what I end up doing here is buying cultured buttermilk, or cultured, not buttermilk, cultured butter. I don't know if he talked about it. Atul is very quick at making ghee. So he will make like a gallon of ghee that lasts 6 months. And then, when it's my turn, I just do the cultured butter thing. And it's also cheaper to do that. And sometimes when you don't have time, you can get, you know, you really have the time. When I see, non-Indian people making ghee, they actually seem to leave some, ghee can never go rancid. It doesn't have any milk solids. So we want this. One of your homework is making ghee at some point, is because we want to make sure that you guys get it. There's absolutely no milk solids. So easiest is to start off making with cultured butter, and eventually if you want to do it, you could start with cream also. Yeah, but first you cannot make, you have to have cream from a milk where the cream rises on the top, not from those homogenized milks. Homogenized milk is they actually shoot the milk with these, or mix the milk so fast, almost like with a centrifugal force, that molecules of the milk break up. So the molecules of the fat in the milk become one with the regular milk, so the cream doesn't rise on the top. That's homogenized. So you can only make butter out of cream from unhomogenized. It's kind of complicated, so better just get cultured butter, easy to get, or just regular unsalted butter. And when we are cooking for someone, like you can, even as simple, if someone cannot digest, take some boiling water, add a half a teaspoon of ghee in it, cool it down, let them drink the water with ghee. That will also be fantastic. So there's so many ways we use boiling water. All right. This was my last slide or what? No, I have more slides. 1 second, I think.